Your brain is your #1 tool. It weighs 1.3 kilos. It's mainly composed of fat. It generates 70,000 thoughts a day. And for the large majority of you, it hasn't reached maturity yet. It will only be when you are 24 or 25. It's a very complex tool. The important word in that sentence is tool, because I think that if we want to be fully empowered, we should all have a brain starter pack. So, interestingly, we measure a lot of things in our body. Maybe you have one of those connected watches, and you know exactly the number of steps you took today, and you track your calories, and your oxygenation level, and your menstrual cycle, right? What about your cognitive performance? What if I ask you, before that talk, have you thought about your brain today? Have you thought about your brain in the last 7 days or even months? Probably not. Why is that? I don't have an answer to that. Just an open question. But I truly believe that what I want, the message I want you to get today from that talk, is that it's high time we put a significant focus on our most powerful tool, our brain. Why don't we study it? Why don't we learn about the brain in school? We learn about math and literature and science and foreign languages, but not so much about the brain. I was a pretty average student, and I hated school. I hated school so much that I had pain in my stomach, more or less until the age of 20 years old. One of the things that I didn't like at all was that I'd never understood the system. I didn't know why my friends who were so smart and so witty and so sharp and so fast never got the best grades. And when I asked, I didn't get the answer, but I was a kid then. I'm not a kid anymore. But that question has not left me. What are the drivers of success in school, in higher education, but also on the job market? So about 10 years ago, I became an educator after a first career in marketing and business strategy. And one thing that has amazed me is that the school hasn't changed that much. The way we teach, everything was different. People are different sociologically. The technology is different. But the way we teach wasn't that different to me. So I started a few things around. I used some marketing techniques in order to sell knowledge to the students so that I could grab their attention, but that was kind of limiting. And then I discovered neuroscience and metacognition, and this opened a whole new world. I wanted to understand how people learn, what happens in the brain when you build new skills, and what happens in the brain when you don't build one, and when you fail. My vision was to empower every student that I would meet to be a little better, to feel a little bit more comfortable in that system that was quite difficult for me at the time. And in more than 10 years of teaching, I have never, ever met a student who doesn't want to learn. Not one. But I have met a lot of students who feel frustrated, who feel sad, who feel stuck in a system they don't understand, with the problem of assessment they don't see the purpose of. And on top of this comes another thing, that all of us, we think differently. Somehow, all of us, we are cognitively different. We have cognitive specificities. Some have names such as ADHD, attention deficit, dyslexia, dyscalculia, spectrum of autism, Tourette syndrome, and some don't have names. There's one word that makes me really uncomfortable, and that is the word atypical, because it implies there is a typical brain. There is no typical brain. There are only people with brain who want to learn. So how do we start? I want you to imagine your brain and all the connections in your brain. All those connections have been shaped by what you learned and your experience and your failures and your success and the people you meet and the food you eat and the travel, all your mental experience. And this creates your connectome, Your connectome is the sums of all those connections. Now, I want you to picture 1 millimeter cubic of your brain. 1 millimeter cubic. 3 years ago, Google and Harvard managed for the first time to design a map of that 1 millimeter cubic, and it looks like this. 20 million neurons and 20,000 neurons and 25 million connections in 1 cubic millimeter. Imagine for the entire brain here, not to mention that you also have neurons in your heart and in your gut. Pretty fascinating, right? But again, it's a tool. So let's understand a bit how this tool is working. So when you look at that, you can see very large and very big roads, neural paths, like the big blue ones. Those are all the skills that you have been practicing for so long that they become automatic. You don't have to think about it. It's comfortable and it's easy. Then you have the smaller roads, okay? Those are skills that you know how to use, but it takes efforts and focus for you. And then you have the empty spaces for new roads to be built. Because this connectome is evolving at every second under the dynamic of neuroplasticity. Do you want to experience neuroplasticity with me? Yes, come on. Okay, everyone, uncross your arms and move a little. Yeah, got that? Now I want you to cross your arms your natural and comfortable way. Good. Excellent, thank you for doing it. Then I want you to decross. And now I want you to cross your arm the weird way. You know, when your other arm comes on top. Oh, that's not wrong, but it's a bit uncommon, right? I want you to decross again. And cross it again the wrong way. Oh. It doesn't feel weird anymore. Within 1 second, your brain has used a different neural path for you to cross your arm. And now it's not weird anymore. This is neuroplasticity in action. Neuroplasticity is fascinating because it's the incredible ability your brain has to adapt to external and internal changes, finding a new way across. So earlier I mentioned the spaces or the roads, the neural paths to be built. Here, Dr. Lila Landowski managed to film for the first time 2 neurons connecting. So it takes a bit of time and efforts, but this is someone taking a risk. This is someone doing something new for the first time. This is someone building a skill. So yes, it requires time, focus, and sometimes pain, but this is neuroplasticity. And it's quite cute, right? Okay, missed that. Neuroplasticity makes me so optimistic because it means that we all have the power to change and overcome any difficulties or any challenges. But how do we do that? How do we start? I'll jump into that in a second, but the message I want you to get here is that with neuroplasticity, you have this incredible ability to build your confidence. Where does it come from? And my colleagues have tried to answer that question, but if you know that no matter what, you have the options to do it, this is fantastic. Because every idea, every thought you have has the potential to create a new neural path that will change your connectome. So nothing is set in stone. This is when nature meets culture. And I found this idea extremely empowering. So how do we start? Let's go again. So, 1, you are the masters of your brain. I think that's kind of a mantra we should repeat, maybe write somewhere in universities. I am the master of my brain. Actually, I think it's so powerful, I would love to hear you saying it with me. So on the count of 3, can you say it with me? 1, 2, 3. I am the master of my brain. Yes, you are. Not your parents, not your partner, not your social media, not your traumas, not your history. You are the master of your brain, you are the boss, and you got this. That's the #1 rule. A lot of people out there are paying great attention to the development of neuroscience, not always for the best purposes, so keep that ownership. As a leader, I think that's extremely important. And second, I would like us to start practicing or enhancing our neuroplasticity, because with neuroplasticity, you fuel your connectome and your ability to tackle any challenges. So I would like you to discover divergent and convergent thinking, which are two cognitive pole on the spectrum of cognition. Are you ready? So how do we learn that? Because that's a lot of science you had in the last 10 minutes. Well, we start with yoga, so I'm inviting everyone to stand up and do yoga with me. Yes, come on, it's the last talk. You moved a little. Okay, excellent. So, great. We are going to do 2 poses of yoga that represent the 2 ways of thinking, divergent and convergent thinking. Are you ready? So the first pose, I'm going to ask you, you open a little your leg, you are careful with your neighbors around, and you just stretch your arms and stretch the spine a little and deep breathe. And you let go. That was nice, right? The stretching. That's the first pose. Let's go for the second pose. I want you, this time, to dive into and try to grab either your leg, your knee, your feet, or the floor, if you are very flexible, and deep breathe in this. Come on, let's go, everyone. And back. Well done. You may sit. Yeah, you are a great audience. Thank you very much for following me on this one. So, let's go back to neuroscience. The first pose refers to what we call divergent thinking. Divergent thinking is when your mind is open, and you brainstorm, and you are creative, and you look for new ideas. And in here, it's like a firework. One idea, another one, and it goes in every direction. Divergent, convergent thinking is when you focus on one goal. You want to get a decision, you want to get closure, and you push yourself in order to achieve that element. So naturally, because if you remember, we like the big, comfortable roads we saw, the big, comfortable neural paths that are coated in fat. So we would be either a divergent thinker or a convergent thinker. That's why sometimes there are conflicts in groups. Sometimes some students are divergent thinker and they have plenty of ideas, and some other students say, no, let's focus on the result, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. And sometimes, 24 hours before the deadline, you have one group member who says, I have this idea. Why don't we change everything? So managing your ability to switch from convergent thinking to divergent thinking is one way to exercise neuroplasticity and be a stronger leader too. Because sometimes it's important to be in divergent thinking mode, where you create solutions and options and future choices, and think outside of the box. But there is one moment, one point, where you have to be decisive and switch to convergent thinking. So you reach your goal and you get closure. This is what we call the diamond model. And I found it a great way to exercise neuroplasticity. Make sure that on a daily basis, you are sometimes in divergent thinking mode and sometimes in convergent thinking mode. Neuroplasticity is fantastic. It's fascinating because it will affect every aspect of your life because it fuels your connectome. With neuroplasticity, your ability to learn becomes stronger. You will sleep better. You can overcome trauma. You can picture your future. You will be a better leader. I also find it very moving to know that no matter what, you can deal with it. You can cope with it, and you will adapt and grow out of it. And I'm happy that We can discuss that, especially with young minds that haven't reached full maturity yet, so that you can exercise already. So tonight, when you check your number of steps and calories and oxygenation level and menstrual cycle, maybe also take a second to check your cognitive performance indicators. How was your clarity of mind today? How was your memory? What if you had to take a life decision today? Was your mind, was your cognition ready to do so? And maybe set some objectives for tomorrow in terms of cognition. Because I think it's one of the great ways to empower all of us, because it's high time we all brain up. Thank you very much.